My biggest takeaway podcast.
Welcome back to My Biggest Takeaway. I have a very special guest and a dear friend of mine, Mr. Shaun Vasquez, the CEO and founder of Pride Foods, which you've probably seen or heard me talk about. And if you've listened to many of these episodes, I've referenced this gentleman many times, all in a positive light, which I'm sure he knows because I'm sure he's listened to every single episode of the
In
podcast.
depth.
But, dude, thank you so much for coming on here today, man. I'm looking forward to diving in.
Yeah, I'm pumped. I'm happy we were able to make it work with the schedule that I've got. So let's get into it.
Absolutely, because I know you got a busy one. As we're a dad, right? Dad or a dad of two, beautiful wife, in the middle of nowhere in Oklahoma, running our business and doing our thing. I'm going to roll back the clock a little bit, and I'm going to talk about how we met, which is different Shaun Vasquez than everyone gets to listen to and see today. So when I met you was in when? 2018?
Yep.
Okay. And the first time we met was when me and Nick Stella,
Yep.
we founded two other guys, Rye Supplements, right? And we met at this restaurant with another party, talking about another brand that you had at one point, about us doing the marketing for that brand. And, you know, coming into that, and very shy guy. And I felt like I led, or probably Nate probably led most of the conversation, being that he knew Scott already.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like brief in passing to some degree. I wouldn't say anything really came of that lunch. And then we met in the gym because we were in the same area and we went to the same gym. Of course, you were fully covered in gasp, baggy clothes because that's just the way you roll. Of course, I'm sure I was wearing shorts and a stringer because that's how I roll. And I remember I was getting ready for a show, and I think it was like 4-ish weeks when we first like met or whatever, maybe 6 actually. Actually, it might have been before that because
It was before that.
It was before that because I remember getting ready for this show, where I was like 5.5 weeks out. I was like, I'm gonna do a show, which I know you automatically disagree with, from that nature, being an IFBB pro yourself. Those that don't know, Google this man. He was a mammoth. I say was because we both were bigger men at one point in our lives. Yeah. And already changes, you know what I'm saying? And so one of the things that Shaun helped me do was, I had coffee over cardio at the time, and I was drinking coffee every morning. And he was like, "Hey, you need to get an electrolyte because you're starting to get depleted from when you cut carbs and cardio, etc." He was like, "Get an electrolyte; it'll help you, a better pump." And I got to the point where I could take the electrolyte and I could physically see the difference at that low of body fat in the shape of my fullness. I would actually sweat more working out. And it was great.
Performance, everything.
He was like, "You should just put in your coffee." And I was like, "Okay." And he was like, "You should come out with a product underneath coffee that's a hydration product that you can put in your coffee." And I was like, "Holy shit, I think we probably should do that." Lo and behold, we came out with salted caramel hydrate, which is the first hydrate ever from Shaun Vasquez brain. I think he was like, you were the one coming up with the flavor profile too. Granted, super hard flavor profile to go in and master, because if anybody knows anything about supplements, the only way to make supplements taste good when you're using a lot of different chemicals or ingredients, whatever you want to call them, is either you need acids or you need calories. Well, coffee is already acidic, so you can't put acid in it, or acids. And then, of course, we didn't want to add calories like a protein, where it has something for the flavor to sit on. So I'm trying to flavor water with caramel flavor and salt. So it was very hard to try to master. And I think we did the best that we could. And but that's essentially how that started. But the story that I want to tell is that I was like, "Hey, man, I'm 3 weeks out. I want you to take a look at me and see what you think." So I'm in the bathroom. I'm down in my trunks.
24-hour fitness.
24-hour fitness, baby. Public bathroom. Here we go. And I'm posing. I got my buddy of mine videoing, and I'm like, man, I look great for 3-4 weeks dieting. I'm fucking solid. And I was like, what do you think? He was like, what do you think? I was like, I think it looked good. He's like, okay. And I was like, all right. I was like, I don't want to lean out too much because my arms are going to start to get, really small because I'm going to start to lose them. I'm going to start to look stringy. He was like, okay. And I'm like still trying to like justify my shape and my look. And he's like, okay. And he goes, knock, knock. And I was like, what? And it was like, knock, knock. And I think it was essentially like, like we're knocking on first place, but we're not quite there yet.
Who's knock, 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 knock? Who's there? Second place who?
There you go.
Yeah.
And from there, we hit it because I respected him to tell me the truth and not just what I wanted to hear. But at the same time, he was like, but if you're happy, that's all that matters.
And it's funny for me to be able to like think back and have that realization in that moment, because like personally, I would have never, and I never did for myself, but I said, well, what are your expectations? What do you want? Mm-hmm. Do you want to win? Because you're not in a position where you're probably going to win. It all depends on who shows up, sure. But you're not setting yourself up. However, if you're just trying to go in there and look good.
Yeah. Just so we're clear, I did win my class in both categories. But I did not win the overall. However, I don't think I won the overall because of how lean I was. I think I didn't win the overall because you don't win a bodybuilding show in the weeks of that you diet. You win it in the off season to put on the muscle to actually compete as a bodybuilder, not a body cutter. Obviously, everybody comes in conditioned. But at the same time, like you got to have the mass. And being that I was focused on essentially building a business more or less than bodybuilding at that point because I'd given up. I say I'd given up, I'd quit because I hadn't competed before that. It was 5 years. So it was like basically coming out of retirement 5 years later, going to step on stage in 5.5 weeks. Obviously, I knew I wasn't going to bring the best package that Mike Krausen could have brought, but I felt like I brought the best package that I could have at that where I was at in my life. Right.
Was that your first show post pec tear?
Yeah.
That's a big.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's my only show. Yeah, deal. I mean, because I was like at 260 at one point, and then I got on stage at like 210. But before, like at that point when I was 260, I would have stepped on stage probably around like the 225, 230 mark.
Yeah.
5 years prior. So I basically like had everything had changed. It's like I'm just trying to look the best that I can, right? And actually, since then, doing that show, like I've kept decent conditioning, and just lived a better lifestyle. You know what I also learned during that prep though, is I had a friend of mine help me. Before I ate so much protein, I was doing like 8 ounces a meal, and I would lower my carbs. And what we actually did was lowered my protein and increased my carbs, and I actually got leaner, felt better, because I think it was just so much stress in my gut.
And less stress overall from like not putting this like, I got to be 220, 230 and just like, I have to be first.
Yeah. I was just like, I'm just trying to get on stage.
Right.
And so I was just walking. So it was the least amount of energy and effort I put into the show. And it was actually probably the best I'd ever looked as a complete package. Not the biggest guy that I could have been or maybe was in the past, but the best overall package as far as showing up, feeling good, not starved.
Body working for you, not against you.
Yeah. And anyway, I digress on that story, but it was the honesty that Shaun gave me. Since then, me and you have had an amazing relationship, to where you've been nothing but honest with me. We've been able to build companies together, build relationships together, build friends together. We've shared drinks, we've shared vacations. We've had a lot of great experiences. Got to see you have your kids, right? So we've grown through a lot in this. And I want to first say thank you. And I'm proud of everything you've done, dude.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been an interesting change in both of us from, let's just call it that locker room banter, right? It's been
For
an
sure.
interesting change and evolution and progress. At times maybe it didn't seem like it was happening for both of us, but if you zoom out, right, it's been like a sprint forward, not to the finish line, but forward. So
Yeah,
I appreciate it, and likewise, I'm happy to have been along for all your ups and downs as well, and be there for the downs.
absolutely. Because I know I've had my fair share.
Oh yeah.
So I want to give what you do as far as your company a little spotlight here. So if those don't know, Pride Foods is essentially, well, I'm not going to butcher it. I'll let you tell you. What is Pride Foods?
So we started going on 5 years ago, the end of March, early April this year. There was a gap. There was a need for a specific product, which is our flagship product. It's a hot cereal, better known as cream of rice. It's um, granulated white rice, organic. And that was our flagship product. Pride itself stands for personal responsibility in delivering excellence. So we make the top tier, best cream of rice on the market, period. Always have. And essentially, you can't really necessarily make it better, right? Than we do. I wanted to come out of the gates making a product that way. And it stays true to what Pride actually stands for, the acronym itself. And so we're a food company operating in the fitness space. However, we've got customers from all walks of life and all ages and everything. And so um, we are focusing specifically on the rice and grinds. We've got an almond butter. We have an organic long grain white rice as well, certified organic, all sourced and manufactured, as well as the bags, the jars, the labels, everything here in the U.S. And so, yeah, man, we're a food company trying to not trying. We are making
Yeah, I was going to say,
changes.
we're
Yeah,
feeding the people, baby.
yeah,
We are
yeah,
feeding, and actually globally.
yeah, yeah. We've got distribution in the GCC, so the Greater Gulf countries in the Middle East. Getting ready to potentially partner with Oxygen Gym. Would be a big account for us out in Kuwait. Getting ready to build the world's biggest gym in, I'm going to butcher it if I try to say exactly where it's at. Um, Getting ready to send product to the UK. You have distribution in Canada, getting ready to go direct to Canada as well. Small distribution in South America. Yeah, man. So we've got a lot planned for next year as well. So yeah, feed the people.
Feed the people. And so I've been able to watch this journey. I've been fortunate enough to help this journey. Um, and the man that it takes to run something like this is unique. It takes time to build. Um, because the man that started the company, from my own perspective, just like when I started, and I don't have a fucking clue. I just got this idea and I want to take to market. And one thing that Shaun and Pride Foods has not done is taken any shortcuts. And I think that talks about to the man in which you are. So we're talking about a man that served our country. We're talking about a man that become an IFBB pro. The discipline it takes to hold true, even though there were opportunities where you could take shortcuts on so many different things when you were formulating, creating, where it was like, I was like, man, just go already. And he was like, no, I gotta wait. It needs to be just right. It needs to be just perfect. And I'm like, Bob, but this is like good enough. He's like, no. Good enough is not going to cut it for us. And it's held true. And it's going to allow you to continue to flourish and grow. And you're going to be across grocery stores before we know it. For all those that are listening, most people don't have this problem, but one of the problems that Shaun and Pride has had um, is being able to stay in stock because people love the product and you have an amazing reoccurring customer base that just always is coming back and always coming back and always coming back. And it's because of the quality, which it's so great. Why do you think that you hold so true to that standard of excellence?
Why do I personally?
Why no shortcuts? When you had so many opportunities to do so, you're like, I'm just going to wait. I'm just going to not make the money. I'm just going to make sure that it's exactly what I would want. And it's exactly what I want my kids to eat.
Yeah. Good question. I believe if I'm thinking about it, it was something early on that served me, and then I kind of had to do away with, and I'll explain it in a second. And however, there's certain components to it that it is great. And what I mean by that is this expectation. Once I have an idea, this level of expectation. And for example, with bodybuilding, I was always covered up because I had this expectation of what my physique would need to look like, what I wanted it to look like, how lean I wanted it to be, cap delts, you name it. And if it wasn't there, I didn't want to see it because I'm working on it. I didn't want to focus on what I didn't have. I wanted to. I know it's not there yet, right? And I had this level of expectation to what my conditioning would be, and everything in me would push toward making progress towards that. Now, in my life, especially my adult life, if I had an expectation, even as on a small scale, of the way I was going to do X, and it didn't, I mean, I would pop like a top, and I would be pissed and frustrated, right? Luckily, fortunately, bodybuilding, that expectation, at least with the trophies and the awards, like there was some success met there. So like I continued to go down that route. And so with Pride, I had an expectation, and I put that, vision board, if you will, in my head. I had an expectation, and that was it. And from there, because I had that mentality always, I never wavered from it. And as I've gotten a little bit more wisdom and a little older, I'm better at like being fluid to expectations, because life is not it's not so rigid or so black and white. It's all over the place. However, I've understood that certain expectations in these things that you put, these standards that you put, they are good. And so that standard that I put up there, well, one, I ran into digestive issues myself. And so the quality of food I believe to be extremely important. And so I put that up there. And the things that don't serve me in regards to expectations, that they're off that bulletin board, so to speak. But the ones that are good are still up there. And that one in regards to quality foods, especially now having the family and now all the other customers, that standard is up there, and I won't waver from it. And all you have a bunch of things in the world. People all say, all you have is your word. You have a bunch of things, but you have your word, right? If I give you my word, I'm going to be on this call at 2 for this podcast. The only thing that'll get in that way, if my family absolutely needs me and I say, Mike, I apologize, but they always have my word, right? And so with this food, who am I if I'm like, yeah, we're Pride, but we're going to use sucralose, or you know what, we're not going to use that organic rice that costs 3 times more than that conventional rice, and it's enriched with iron and folic acid, and people can't metabolize folic acid, but I don't care because I'm going to be able to make 25 more percent or 3 more percent, whatever it is. Who am I? I got to go to sleep with myself at night. Not okay with it. And so that standard I have, especially now that I have 4 little eyes looking up at me, I got to make sure I hold the line, right? I got to hold that standard. Everybody talks about hold the line, hold the line. Well, first you have to identify what that line is first. And for me, that's those set of standards. And again, early on, maybe to a detriment, I had that expectation, but I've learned okay, I'm going to trim the fat, and it's good to have standards, right? It's good to have a code.
Absolutely. 100%. And I think that, I think as I've watched your journey, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And the standard which you hold for yourself, your family, your products, and everything that you essentially do, either I'm not going to do it or I'm going to do it the best way that it should be done, not the easiest way it needs to be done.
Right.
And for those that looking to learn about the product, where can they find it?
www.pridefoods.org, the Pride Foods on Instagram. We've got YouTube up. We've got videos explaining how to cook, product, this, that, and the other. I will take a second to, something that I haven't done a great job of explaining. A really, really, really big part of our product. We have always used USDA certified organic long grain white rice from the largest organic long grain white rice grower and mill in the US. And this information is starting to come out now. And it's very, very important as to why we use that. Now we have our unflavored is certified organic. Keep in mind, we've always used certified. We're now moving towards certifying it all. And the reason that's important is because in the 1940s, the US government mandated that all refined grains had to be fortified or enriched with nutrients, certain nutrients, because of, we won't get into the weeds on why, but they felt that there was a need to fortify them because they didn't want malnutrition or, issues with not having certain nutrients.
Mhm.
Because when you remove the whole, the brown from the brown rice, because all of it starts brown rice in regards to rice, you remove those nutrients. But they fortify them with heavy amounts of iron, which iron can cause constipation, but it also can cause a myriad of other issues, especially within the fitness industry you want to stay away from. And now there's pretty good evidence and studies that I think it's upwards of 40+% of people do not metabolize folic acid, synthetic version of folate, and can cause some issues as well. And so they fortify it with that folic acid as well. And so ours is unadulterated USDA organic certified white rice, as is our long grain white rice. So we're putting that out in regards to information. I just felt the need to put that out there again because I
Absolutely.
personally haven't done a very good job of explaining that consistently, and I know you've been on my ass about it.
Yeah, and it's obviously like the importance of that, and obviously, governing bodies try sometimes to do what they think's best for the people,
Sure.
and then obviously, whenever it's famine times or lack of nutrients, making us put it in there to help that. Roll the clock now. What is it? 80, 90 years later. Now we have so much stuff in the food that now it's overkill and now it's too much, causing issues.
Yep.
Especially if you're somebody that eats a lot more frequently than we did in the 40s. Now you're getting in too much,
Sure.
which is leading to a lot of other issues, right? So having a beer, not so bad. Having 12, not the best for our liver, right? It's kind of the same concept when we're talking about these iron and folic acid.
Yep.
But let's get more into the man, because a business plan is easy to execute, but the man it takes to do it is difficult. What is the number one thing that you've taken away from starting Pride Foods?
It's a tough question. There's a lot of takeaways.
What's the one that comes to your head that speaks out the most?
The one that comes to mind the most is there is no success worth having with the business if, quite frankly, I'm a piece of shit. None, right? No amount of success, no amount of cars, no amount of land, no amount of materialistic things, no bank account, no nothing. If I'm not right in here with me, with my family, with my people, if I didn't have a family, that would still hold true. It starts with me, right? No amount of success, because I've got the trophies right here behind the podcast. I've had the jobs, the houses, come from no houses, right? From a house on cinder blocks. Like the vehicles, I wanted more when I was younger. I thought that was the thing, and that's altered, right? But I'm in a position to where I could have certain things. It's just not; those aren't the things. It's the characteristic traits. It's how my family speaks about me. When I get home, how am I greeted? What do they think about? Are they excited? Do they look to me to lead them and trust that I will do the a good job, a great job. The friends that reach out to me that are in my circle, can they count on me? Can I be there for them? And so that's the biggest thing, because especially with social media these days, it paints a picture, distorted picture of what success is or could be, or what it should be, or what it should be for you when it's different for everyone else. And I'm not saying those things aren't great if somebody else gets them, but for me, because you asked me, it's making sure that I'm right, so that when pride does make any progress, or equally as important, if it takes a step back, if I'm not right, then what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my family whenever, pride may take a step back to take a step forward, and so forth and so forth.
I like that. So I shared this on a previous podcast, but I don't know if you recall. I'm sure that you do, because you have a really good memory. I was talking about my successes and what I wanted, as we openly talk about often. And I was like, yeah, man, I want like this really nice house in Colorado in the mountains. And you said, yeah, go for it. Do it. I was like, yeah, man, like this is what I'm going to do. And he's like, yeah, absolutely. Do it. He was like, just remember why you're buying it. And I was like, what? It's like, just remember why you're buying it. Because you can do it. I believe in you. You'll make it happen. Just make sure you're not in it alone. I was like, okay. And he was like, you talk about a lot of the issues you have is because you work a lot. I was like, yeah, like I love it. So, yeah. But if you shave just like 10% off, you'd get it. It just might take you another few months to get it. But you would like enjoy the journey just a little bit more, and like you wouldn't be lonely in that house. And I've like thought about that a lot over and over. And I go through phases to where I'm like thinking of that conversation, and then I'll like forget the conversation. I dive right back into work, and I'll think about the conversation and take a step back. And that just goes to show, I think, based on what he just said, the man in which he tries to be. And like that conversation is just leading from a place of wanting what's best for me. Because most people are like, fuck yeah, dude, go buy it. Go for it. Make it happen. And you did. But at the same time, also understand the repercussions in which can follow when we are blind in that journey.
I don't want to visit you in the house alone unless you're happy alone.
Sure.
Right? If that's what you want it by yourself, I'll come visit you. But I don't want to visit you and you're just sitting there in a pity party because you got it and you're alone, and what you sacrificed to get there.
And so I want to talk about that to some degree. So in bodybuilding, I think we both can agree, is obviously probably the most selfish thing that somebody could do as far as a sport or a hobby goes. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's pretty damn selfish.
Yeah,
it's pretty
absolutely. So what's the biggest thing that bodybuilding taught you when it comes to the selfish part of it?
That's a tough one. Got a lot of tough questions. I told you I needed my my team, my 6-year-old and my 1-year-old to go through these questions, so I was ready for them. Growing up, I played basketball, team sport, but I grew up isolated, pretty isolated, even in crowds, isolated because of my upbringing. Right, there weren't many people that were in the situations that I was, and so I didn't even realize the situations that I was in, and so I didn't relate to a lot of people. I just isolated, and so like in bodybuilding, I was isolated. However, the tremendous amount of work that I put into it by measures of plastic trophies and first places, there was success, right? So I guess what I did learn is that if you put foot to ass and you work, like, you can create your success based off of your input. You work your ass off. You can control. Now, it's subjective. People thought I looked better or the best that day. However, clearly what I was able to do with my physique from, 135 pounds in high school to competing around 220, 222, 225 and pretty lean, I made success there. I just happened to win on certain days and I have trophies and accolades to prove it. However, it did give me that sense of, oh crap, man, I can actually go and do these really, really hard things, put forth this effort, make these sacrifices and reap some benefits from there and some success from there, albeit, there were some things that weren't the best from it as well. Sure. Right. But I mean, talk about anybody, and I'm not comparing myself to the greats of anything, but talk about people trying to attain greatness, right? And there is stuff that they sacrifice and they lose along the way.
Right now in your journey, what is it that you're trying to be successful at?
A human being. As corny as that sounds, man.
I don't think it sounds corny. I think it's fucking deep.
Just a good human being. My majority of my life, I was surrounded by human beings that did not get the opportunity to work on themselves, and they repeated the same programming that was given to them. And for the lack of, fluffing it up and making it, sound great, they weren't very good people. They were at times pieces of shit, right? And I started to take on some of the same traits, treat myself and the people that were around me the same way, similarly, I should say, similarly. And I didn't like it. It wasn't somebody I'd want to come home to. It wasn't somebody that I'd want to call dad. But I nipped that in the bud real quick. But it's a work in progress always, at least for me. Right? Those things, that programming isn't so easy just to turn off. I've gotten extremely better at it, much better. But there is the level of perfection of the ideal that I put on that bulletin board that I have for myself, and that code and that standard that I want. So after being a good human being becomes a husband, a father, a friend, a leader, a business owner, etc. It's all downstream from there.
What do you think it takes to achieve forgiveness? Because you've had to forgive a lot, right? Because those who don't know, we had a pretty rough childhood. But the spare the details. How do you forgive those that did you wrong?
I don't mind not sparing the details if that's the case as well, to help context. But so we all have an ego. This is my perception, my conception. Like, this is how I explain it to myself so I can understand it. And that ego that we see, that our ego is based off of like our life experiences, and that happens to essentially be the lens in what we see life through. Mike might be running at me, and based off of my ego, my perception of life, and I can't see very well because it's blurry as shit, I might think he's running out to attack me, but he might be running at me to embrace me. But my reaction is that I think he's running at me to attack me because I'm fight or flight. That's my perception of the world, right? And so you got to clear the lens as much as you can.
Sounds like rule 3.
What's rule 3?
Agreement number 3.
Oh, right. I think. Is it personal?
Not make assumptions.
Right. Not make assumptions. Clear the lens. And so I've been able to, over time, clear that lens so I can see clearly. I can see clearer. And it gives me time to see things coming from a little bit further away and understand them, and maybe realize that, man, that person who did me wrong, they were just doing wrong, they were just human, just like me. I had a moment, if you will, or a collective amount of moments where I woke up and was like, if I do not make a change, I'm repeating the same thing. And how far can this go? Because I remember how far it went when I was in the passenger seat and I was along for the ride. Am I going to continue that and now be the driver of it? And so it just gives you better perspective.
For somebody that's struggling with that lens, and they're struggling with essentially, I think, forgiving themselves or trying to get past a hard spot in their life, do you have any books that you would recommend?
Yeah, let me try to remember them. We touched on it. The Four Agreements is great. I read and or listen to Four Agreements whenever I have to make a tough decision, or I'm in a tough spot, or because it's a quick read, quick listen, right? It can kind of revitalize you a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
or any type of difficult, something that kind of comes up abruptly. Outwitting the Devil is one of just an amazing, amazing listen. The Mastery of Love, a really recent one by Don Miguel Ruiz. One of my favorite listens is The Alchemist. Have you ever listened to that book?
Mm-mm.
It's
Yeah,
a
I've heard of it.
dude. It's the guy from Bruce Willis movies, Die Hard. You know how Bruce Willis kills the first guy? Well, his brother, the guy's like flying the helicopter in the next one, it's got that really raspy voice. He's from somewhere across the pond. He narrates it, and it's unbelievable. I mean, it's like you're listening to a movie because it's so like he just draws you in.
Yeah.
It's such a good listen, man. It's long, really, really long. I'm not been the biggest listener of a reader of books, but those have been some that I can remember. Oh, hold on. The Boy, the Fox, the Mole. Yeah, man. So I gotta tell that story.
It's a book. It's called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Mackey.
Yep. So I gotta tell that story real quick. We're at the house in Moore. I had just started down the journey of unpacking my bags, as I like to call it. Getting rid of the baggage, getting rid of the bullshit. Sitting in the bed, and Kinder's maybe a little over 2 at this time, maybe. And Kinder being my daughter. And my buddy Brian, very good friend of mine, sends me that book. And I hadn't read it yet, and I know nothing about it. So we're all sitting on the bed, and Kinder's like, "Will you read the horse book? Read the horse book." So I sit down, I'm sitting with them, and it's Jess, my wife, Kinder in the middle, and I start reading it. I get like 4 pages in, and I'm a mess. I'm just bawling, just tearing me down. And like Kinder's looking at me like, "What's wrong with Dad?" And I keep reading it, man, and it's just like every page is a little nugget that hits certain strings
Yeah,
every
just so
time.
everybody knows, if you're watching this, you can see this. It's literally just like a picture book with like a little bit of like text, and you think like, oh, this is like a child's book, but it's like it's so powerful in just the little messages. Just like, a little piece here. I've learned how to be in the present. How? Asked the boy. I find a quiet spot and shut my eyes and breathe. It's like that type of thing to where it's like, you know, um, it's just a story of 4 characters that would never be together.
Right.
Um, but it's a quick read and it's really good. But it is, when you're in it, man,
Yeah.
it breaks you. It breaks you.
Yeah.
So it's funny because, here it is, pro bodybuilder, wannabe bodybuilder, um, business owners, some would say successful men. I like to think sometimes I know that I am, but also like to think, well, there could be more. That's my own personal doings that I need to work on. I'm not sure where you stand at this point in your journey. I know at one point you were on that side of the fence. And I know that you also know that you're always a work in progress. But I do find it funny that we've also shared like some big cries together. And I think that's something that a lot of men, I think, shy away from. right? For the obvious reasons. And one of the experiences that we did that together with was at Rob Bailey's. And it's actually the first time that I got to experience breathwork for the first time by Brendan Grew, who was on the podcast a few episodes ago. And you were like, "Oh, we're doing breathwork," and you were like, "Oh shit!" And I was like, "What, dude? We're fucking breathing. Chill the fuck out." And he was like, "Okay." 30 minutes later, I'm fucking sobbing on the floor, right? Just so freaking loud that like the guy came over and was like, you know, putting his hands on me and whatnot as we're like going through this journey. And for myself, it was a combination of like recently going through divorce and all the shit that happened with that. And then you're obviously, and I not realizing childhood trauma in my own self. Wow, you
Sure.
already were working on childhood trauma, or actually, I think this was really in the beginning stages of you starting to unpack those bags.
Yep.
A few years ago, 2019-ish, I believe it was.
Yep.
Maybe 20, I can't remember. But it's so funny. Like I owe you so much credit for helping me in so many ways, like forcing me to go to the Olympia,
Oh, that's right.
right?
Yeah. I remember
Forcing me to go, and I didn't want to go. You're like, "You're coming. You're going to stay with me." So like, book a ticket, go to Orlando, and that's when we met Rob in person for the first time, and ended up joining this group, and that's how we essentially go to this thing in the first place. And I feel like my life's essentially changed since that trip in Orlando. And yeah, so let's talk about that, because now somebody that has kids, right, which I don't have the pleasure or experience of knowing or having what that feels like. Those big cries. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say big cry?
a pressure release valve.
Mm.
Those emotions are there, or were put there, right? Like the things
Mhm.
happened, whether it's 20 years ago or 20 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to the boiling point, and if we're not, if we don't know how, we don't have the opportunity, or we don't allow ourselves to release those emotions, and then they embed themselves in us, and um, at the very least can cause turmoil, and at the very worst can cause personality traits and addiction and all these different things that we don't want as well. And so yeah, I had I knew about the breath work because the lady that I had started to work with, psychoneurologist, did hypnosis, and we did some breath work. And the first time that I did it, I was like, this is a roller coaster. I'm not in charge of. I'm in charge of staying on the roller coaster.
Yeah.
But once on it, I was like, what is this? And so when we were there, I'm like, I was comfortable with her on these Zoom calls, and I'm in a room full of 110 people. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be on this roller coaster. And I'm like, God dang it, I'm here though, right? I better be where my feet are. And so it's a pressure relief. Now, I've gotten to the point where they happen less, but why? Not because the emotions are less, because I now have certain tools and abilities to relieve those pressures.
So, what, in your opinion, is like, what's the first step for somebody going and finding help to essentially, like, I want to say, find the valve in which we need to release that pressure?
Oh man, it's such a tough question, because I've done a plethora of different type of exercises or modalities to help, right?
Mm-hmm.
From the therapy to, I think, even training at to some extent. Now
Yeah.
exercising
Yeah.
is a big part of my life. Plant medicine, things like that. So
For entry level, let's just say, for the person, I'm going to use myself as an example. For the person that identified themselves as the person that worked out and then had an injury or can't go as hard as they once could, so I couldn't release that pressure underneath the bar anymore.
sure.
So I'm not able to tap that valve. on a daily basis and maintain that pressure through that pain. Now it starts to bottle and bottle and bottle and bottle. And we all know what happens when you hit the top to the pressure cooker. It takes off.
And screams.
And I no longer have those essential training methods that I used to do through like beat myself up, right? Which is now I'm getting the effects of of releasing that pressure so hard from the gym, right? As many bodybuilders do. And then I got into jiu-jitsu to where I could like then release that also on the mats, got hurt there. Now can't do that either to the full piece. I can't go sprinting without pulling something like, so I'm not able to have this like full out aggression to where I can release it. And now I've got to find other ways to somehow pop that top. But for the person that's in that situation, that's, let's just say coming of age where you can't just do whatever you want anymore to let that anger out, what would be your first suggestion?
I think you're painting a picture that they're aware, but let's just say they're not aware. I think it all has to start with awareness.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
And again, I know that's that might be a catchword, phrase, or however they say it, just a snippet awareness. But until I was aware, and I'm still gaining awareness now on certain aspects, it just didn't matter. That awareness might be brought upon somebody else talking to you, being open-minded to hearing it, to seeing it. And that awareness allows you to read books, listen to podcasts. Podcasts have been instrumental to listening to some intellectual people talk and me realizing that this wasn't a me problem. This was a human problem. I just happened to have my own spin on what happened to me, around me, for me, with me, etc. And the awareness is the big one. And then moving in the direction of whatever it is, right? So you have that awareness, all these emotions, all these things, all this pressure, and then just moving in the direction of something that's healthy, whatever that is for that individual. It could be sitting outside. And here's a big one. Having the awareness, moving in the direction, and realizing the things that lower your frequency, that lower your vibrations, that distract you. This is a big one right now. It's a huge one. It's a huge one. And all that's going to do is continue to distract you from those a little tap on your shoulder, the little voice on your head, or continue to allow you to feed the bad wolf. Because we're all in that same journey. We're just in slightly different boats, but we're all on that same voyage, right? Same exact voyage. But it's the awareness, moving in that direction and understanding that there are things that are after your dopamine, your attention, your awareness, because you're for sale. Your attention's for sale. You're essentially a commodity. Your information is, right?
Yeah, so essentially sitting with yourself and literally zero distractions, which is obviously going to be the same thing as basically what meditation is, right? Is like to sit and have no thoughts. I also find that for myself, I sit, and if you find yourself, your mind's just nonstop racing, I think that's also you running from the nothing that is you. Because if we're always thinking about things that we need to do or have to do, we don't get to sit with who am I?
You don't get to be where your feet are.
Right, because we're always moving. And so you're always wanting or worrying instead of just like, I'm here right now.
Yeah, there was something that I heard on, I believe, I hope I'm recanting it correctly, but Matt Vincent's podcast. I don't remember the guest, but I believe he's the one that said it. But he got caught up in being a human doing, not a human being, right? Just doing. And in my position now with the kids at the house, running the business, trying to make sure I'm still doing the things for me, I had towed that line on, am I being a human doing and I'm doing all the things, or am I where my feet are at and I'm a human being? And it's toggle at times, but the awareness allows me to see that at times and then stop and say, that can wait. My wife needs me. She just needs me to talk tonight. or to rub on her shoulders or listen to her, right? Like she needs me. Stop doing all the things.
Mm. Can we talk about the school?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'll let you intro.
Yeah, my wife and I decided to jump into something extremely new. If a lot of the listeners are familiar with affiliate CrossFit gyms, CrossFit affiliates, and they have all
Mhm.
these affiliates throughout, and they have their curriculum and all these the way that they run their CrossFit. There is something called Apogee. Apogee started by Matt Boudreau and Tim Kennedy. They have a young men's mentorship program, a dad's mentorship program, a mom's or women's mentorship program, and soon going to be launching the young ladies mentorship program, where depending on what program you're in, they're pouring into you with weekly calls. You're in units, so a community where you can pour into one another. You can help each other out. There are monthly tasks, whether it be financial, um, spouse related. If you're in the dad's program and you're pouring into your wife and trying to be a better husband, better leader, better father. There's health and wellness. Every month there are different things that you're working towards. Entrepreneur, sovereignty, you name it. And then they have podcast or weekly calls, if you will, to where they have entrepreneurs, authors, politicians, you name it. They come on these calls. Alex Hormozy was on one of the calls early on. Some freaking awesome authors, some books that I've read. They've been on the calls, and so like the who's who, just again pouring into these young men and dads and whoever's in the groups, and simultaneously while all this is going on, Tim and Matt helped Tim start um, Apogee. It was an acting academy previously, Socratic-based learner-led school, private school, and they see a huge need to create an environment to where kids can learn separate from this conveyor belt system of education that started, in the early 1900s or late 1800s, whenever it was, for the industrial kind of revolution, industrial jobs, and that entire environment, which has obviously changed to where we are now and able to do what we're doing now. But the education system has still stayed that continuous conveyor belt system. And so they started that with huge success. To give some background on Matt Boudreau, he's got an extensive career in academics and education, private school, public school, higher education, I believe Stanford. He's opened over 300 schools. He's helped open and opened over 300 schools in the U.S., I believe acting academies. And so education has kind of been a lifelong journey and career for him and his family. And so they decided to get their heads together and get this Apogee nationwide affiliate program where they want to disrupt the education system. And they had over 500 applicants, and they picked 50 to start with the first year, and we were one of 50. And so we'll be still opening the OKC Apogee here in Oklahoma City next fall. And it is a Socratic-based learner-led environment. We have guides or coaches to help guide and coach those learners, those heroes, the young kids. And it's there. It's not just how's your report card, standardized tests, right? Like the best education that you've probably gotten has been foot toe to line in the trenches, fire aim ready, right? And so like there's a saying going around that in life will give you tests and then you learn the lesson. In school they will give you the lesson and then test you. But where's your report card from how you did in 2023, right? I mean, maybe your bank account or maybe your relationships, and that's real. Not a you got an A in this and you got a C in this and so
All
forth and so
right.
on. So it's creating the same type of environments that let them flourish and learn at a pace in which is conducive to them. And I can go on and on. But yeah, so we're starting that in September of next year. We've already started the training. Um, every week we're meeting with the entire group and going over all the back end, the details, et cetera, et cetera.
And so if somebody is in the OKC area and they were interested in this for their little youngsters, or they want to be a part of it in a bigger way as an adult, how can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, apogeeokc.com.
Can you spell that for those listening?
APOGEE OKC.com. Instagram is Apogee Oklahoma City, or at Apogee Oklahoma City. And then you can even look up Apogee Program on Instagram for the overarching Instagram for all the Apogee programs. And then you can kind of see how they pour in, how we are going to pour in to everyone. A really cool thing, part of the tuition for the parents, for the moms and dads, they get access to the dad's group, to the mom's group, to where, again, they're joining a community in which they're just trying. The chief definite aim is to make them a better husband, wife, father, mother, leader, steward of, just become sovereign and whatever that means, to them, and to make them a better person, to pour into them, to give them the resources. So having access to that, it's the school is about a journey for the family, not just the kids.
I love that. And I wanted to bring that up because obviously we're some trying times, no matter what side of the fence you're on. I think we all can agree to that. And I think that it starts with the education, because like there's only so much we can fix. The truth is that those that come after us is what really can make the big changes.
Yep.
And so I'm excited to see what you guys can do. I'm excited to watch your kids essentially flourish inside this system as well. To hopefully not only become the next, I would say us, but a much better version than us, which I know from my father's standpoint, that's what he always wanted was me to be better than him. And I know that's what you want for yours as well. So
Yeah.
Excited for that. And I do encourage that if you're like, that sounds interesting, please check it out.
Yeah. And if you're in Oklahoma City, in the area, in the metro, we're going to start having family meetups at a local coffee shop in January. The plan is to build our tribe, which even, saying it out loud is, and people are going to hear it, is difficult for me because I'm, again, isolated, right? I've always been isolated.
Mhm.
So to have a very small circle, it's not because I'm a badass or I keep my circle small. It's just natural for me. I'm not a butterfly, social butterfly at all times. And so to get out and say, all right, I'm going to intentionally build this tribe of like-minded individuals, and then realize that I have something to offer. I can help them. I can pour into them, or I can just listen and learn from them as well. It's very foreign to me, but it's needed. And as a father, I need to lead that example, right?
How old are you, Shaun?
38.
At what age did you feel like you had something to share and help other people do?
38.
For those that are listening, it's never too late to make an impact on the world.
38. And I'm barely.
What do you want? Go ahead.
I'm barely realizing that. It's.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. But you've been helping me for years. What do you want people to take away from you?
That's a tough one because that toes the line with the self-worth. Right. And that's something I'm still working on. So if they are to take something away from me, that means that I have to view myself as having that self-worth. And it's not that I don't have any. It's not that it's always empty and pity party me, but like I live inside my own head. We all do. And I see it, I hear it, I understand it. I'm still in the fight.
It sounds to me like what you actually want people to take away from you is that you are worthy. You listening are worthy.
They are.
Correct.
Themselves. Yep. Has to start with them. They have to have that realization, that understanding.
You are enough. You are worthy. You are capable. And once you believe it, then you get to shine that light and show that to other people as well, which I feel like you're coming into your lighthouse stage of your life. And what I mean by that is I worked with Brandon. He was like, I want you to become a light for other people. I want you to be able to ooze this grace, this goodness, this love to other people, and let them affect them just by being in your presence, by what you bring to the table, by the conversations you have, by the energy in which you walk into the room. That you are enough, you are worthy, and that you do matter. And I feel like you were coming to that stage, or you're coming to the realization that, hey, like I do want to help people. I do want to shed that light. I do want to tell people that you don't have to be where I was. You can be where I'm going.
Yeah, the choppy waters, right? That the lighthouse brings you back from. I often had, it's funny you mentioned that. I often had titled Jess and then Kinder as my lighthouse, because I was in chaos still there. Internally, I was really close to the chaos, and so I'd venture out in the chaos, and somehow I was able to. They were able to bring me back into the awareness, to the understanding, to the shore, to where I could decompress and I could realize it. But my own mind and the programming would take me out to the chaos, and the reason that I even have a difficult time with the self-worth and like worthiness and all, is because the chaos is still. But chaos is not all bad, right? It's okay to go to have a little chaos. It's good. When you're consumed by it is when it's detrimental. And I've been consumed with it since the word go, right? Since one, since two, since three, and so forth and so on. The consumption of the chaos is the problem. But I am coming back little by little, more and more, and understanding that chaos is a good thing sometimes. A little craziness, a little fire under the ass, right? Don't be consumed by it though.
Well, dude, man, I appreciate you coming on here today and, opening up the window essentially to who you are, the mission, and the people that you're trying to help. Even though I know you don't view yourself as a person that feels like they're trying to help people, but you are in your own way. You just don't see it sometimes. And dude, I just want to say thank you. And I love you and appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you. Love you as well. Hope to come and see you guys real soon.
I can't wait, brother.
My biggest takeaway podcast